Hey, this is Mash from Toostupidgamerz, and we got a special video here. So, in the interest of time, just to kind of sum up, I was in the market for a new PC for quite a bit of time. Months of planning later and a bunch of saving up, and I got pretty much exactly what I wanted for this new PC. And I got all the parts in around here. I want to show everything off, to show you the complete parts list. And it's also kind of cool to make a video because when you think about it, I will be editing this video building this computer on the computer that's being built in this video. Anyway, without further ado, I'm gonna go through the parts list for you guys, show off all the parts that I got for this build, and we're gonna throw it over to the actual building of the computer as well, where we will be joined by friend of the channel, Bulbtastic himself, expert on PCs, gonna help set up the Toostupidgamerz 3.0 PC. Before we get started, I'm just gonna remind everyone, make sure to like, comment this video. Don't forget to subscribe. We got plenty of content. Let's get right to it. Like I said, we're going to be going through all of the parts one by one, no particular order, starting with the CPU. CPU, of course, is going to be one of the most important components of the computer. You might compare it to like the brain or the heart of the computer. When selecting a CPU, you definitely want to take a lot of different things into consideration. Your primary marker is going to be what the processing speed is like. So for this, I went with the AMD 9 series. This is the 9950 16 core. I wanted to make sure that this CPU, although it may not be the fastest version, it had a lot of cores. When you're doing a lot of video editing, rendering in intense programs like Adobe After Effects, from my understanding, what you want is a more sophisticated CPU. In this case, something that has more cores. So I'm gonna see how this works for me. I'm hoping nothing but good things. Again, this seems like a really solid CPU. So that is the first component. And next up, as I said, there is no particular order that this is going in. But of course, what computer would be complete without a cooler? I am really shocked at how cheap this was. This ended up being probably the cheapest part of the whole build. If Bulb had told me that I needed thermal paste, I'm sure that would have been cheaper. But yeah, this really ran me under $40. This is the Thermal Right Phantom Spirit 120 SE. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know much about this part. I've never heard of this company before, but what you really do is you look for the pieces that match the rest of your build. This was the one that we settled on, and yeah, that's it right here in its box. Now, another part that I'm struggling to find what the human to computer body part comparison would be for this, but I know this one is really important, and that is the motherboard. So I went with a Aorus. This is the X870 Elite Wi-Fi Edition ICE. Again, motherboards, typically you're going for one that's going to be compatible with your CPU. So we went with this series. I specifically went with this version based off of another friend's recommendation. But yeah, I mean, just take a look at it. This thing looks so awesome. Open up that box and you can see the wonderful goodness that's inside. I can't wait to see it all put together. That is the motherboard I went with for this computer build. And of course, another part, speaking of what's important for computers that are going to be designed to do heavy video editing projects, is going to be your RAM. That's why we went with the Trident Z5 series. These are 4 32GB sticks. Now, most of you probably don't need more than 64, if that, but I opted to go double 64 on this, 4 sticks of 32, because again, you just never know. I mean, having that more RAM, having additional cores in your CPU, these are all things that could potentially influence how fast the video is rendered, how long it takes to do a RAM preview on a really complicated effect for video. It might even help with my streaming. So these are the RAM sticks that we went with. I'm familiar with Corsair. I think I've had these Tridents. I think this is actually what's in the current build, the 2.0 rig that I have. But yeah, these great reviewed. RAM was relatively cheap for what I was expecting, so I was really happy to pick these up. And another part that may also be confused for something that looks like the sticks of RAM that you have is the stick of the hard drive that we have. This is so fascinating to me now because back in the day, your hard drive was a giant, bulky metal piece with a disk inside that spins. Looks like the world is kind of going away from that. A lot of people are using SSD hard drives instead of the old school you know, 7200 RPM disk drives that people had. And the reason they use this is because they're faster. Now, there are trade-offs for the SSD versus other types of hard drives that you could use for your computer. This is technically newer technology as well, so it is still being developed, which means that if you go with something like this, you're not going to get as much space, but you will get something that's faster, potentially more reliable. Also, it's worth noting that it's also smaller too, so you could probably fit more stuff into your computer inside of the case if you just go with a hard drive like this. But again, another trade-off, more expensive. There was a pretty deep discount on these a couple of weeks ago, so I was glad that I picked them up in time. But yeah, 4TB SSD 990 Pro. This one comes with the heatsink. There's a version without the heatsink as well. I'm pretty much doing an only SSD build, whereas my previous computer was SSD and I also had an original hard drive in there as well. But yeah, now I'm just going to do SSD only. This computer is going to have one purpose, and it's going to kill it, trying to make great videos for you guys, trying to do great streams as well on my Twitch stream. So yeah, hopefully this SSD is going to help me do all that. But of course, no computer would be complete without one of the most important components, especially on a PC that is going to be designed for heavy graphical use, for rendering videos, for editing, for doing streams. I am, of course, talking about the graphics card. We went with the MSI 4070 Ti Super. This was a slightly more budget option, but still more powerful for this series. We believe this is going to do everything that I'm going to need it to. I don't believe I've had MSI before, so as you can see, a lot of these pieces are going to be relatively new to me, but I'm hoping that this bad boy is going to do everything that I needed to. Some of the rendering programs also will end up utilizing the graphics card more so than the CPU. There are options that you could set up with the preferences to make sure to do that, to turn that on, to turn that off. But regardless, it's going to be important to have one of these as well. I think this is going to be one of the biggest game changers besides all of the stuff before, just because my old series was a 2000 series. I've had that computer for, I'd say, a good about 5, maybe 6, 7 years. So the 2000 series of that graphics card that I have, which I'll put in the description here just for comparison's sake, was like 10 times slower than what this is. So even if I didn't get the most high-end graphics card, because even this one was really expensive, but even if I didn't get the most high-end graphics card, my new computer is going to be way more of a step up thanks to this guy right here. Again, I ran the benchmarks, I ran the comparison between the old graphics card I had versus this one, and pretty much blew it out of the water in all the categories. I mean, that's really expected because I'm getting a computer brand new today, comparing it to an old computer where it's around about 7 years old at this point, so that it makes sense that it's faster in every way. I wouldn't expect anything else. But yeah, regardless, this is the graphics card that we went to. Extremely important component. I don't have a lot to say about this piece, but obviously it's important. Vertex 1000 watt PSU as well. Everything is clean in its shrink wrap. This is from Seasonic. Pretty much always the heaviest component of the computer besides the case itself, which also I won't be able to show off the case itself in this part of the video because it is a little bit off screen here. It's very big, it's very heavy. I don't know if I can fit it all in the shot. So yeah, that's the power supply that we decided to go with. And for the absolute purpose of just going the extra step, going all out, putting in 2 pieces into this PC that are probably not needed, certainly not used by most people, but they're 2 components I've thought about adding to my previous rig for a really, really long time. So much so that when I was going to do this, I thought, you know what, let's get them. I'm talking about a dedicated capture card and a dedicated sound card. We got the Sound Blaster and the Elgato. The Elgato brand is something that at TSG we have been using for a while. We use many of their products for when it comes to specifically capture cards, but also some other things as well. They really make a lot of great products, especially if you're a streamer or a content creator. It's like the gold standard for a lot of these things. But I'm just going to say this. We've tried other brands of capture cards. They're great, but unfortunately, they all had some various limitations, which the second that we switched over to our original Elgato HD60 Pro, we didn't have any issues. We've been using Elgato for our main recording, in-house recording, for ages. I've been using it on my Twitch streams. Elgato to me is a very quality company at this point in time. They make great products. So I thought, well, they also offer an in-computer version of a capture card. This is basically the same thing. From what I understand, it's basically exactly what the HD 60 does, except that now it's inside of your computer. This goes inside of the computer. You go ahead and plug in the HDMI cables, and it's right there. It's already in your computer. I'm assuming that this works better. Again, I like the option to have more features. So when deciding to get additional, possibly unneeded, but hopefully beneficial parts for the computer, I definitely wanted to get one of these. And last but not least is a sound card. I have not held a sound card in my hand probably since I was about 15 or 14. Because the thing is that back in the day, sound cards were standard. They were used on a lot of computers. You know, eventually over time, motherboards start to incorporate technology that pretty much wiped out the need for a sound card. Most people aren't even aware that there used to be a separate component that you put in the computer, because the sound card was just built into the motherboard now. It's so crazy because you can even get a really cheap sound card for, you know, dirt cheap, because they just don't really sell as much anymore. Now, for the purposes of this build, if I was gonna get a sound card, I didn't want to bottleneck myself with something that is a little bit lower end, which is why I opted out for this Sound Blaster. From what I read in the reviews, provides a pretty good quality sound. It has a lot of the options that I need, and it also does optical sound as well, from what I understand. And really, my only hope for this is just being able to have another sound profile. I can't tell you how useful it would be if I can turn on my computer, we're going to make a recording, or I'm gonna go ahead and do some streams, and I have another sound profile already built into Windows that I can play around with to switch different audio sound sources at once. That would be so awesome. I know that there are third-party options for that as well. You could do virtual sound profiles, stuff like a voice meter. But the thing is, I'm kind of hoping that when I put this thing in, boom, new sound profile, or we might even be able to use this to pull out some really good quality mic recordings. And with all the parts out of the way, that's gonna do it for this part of the video. Again, I wanted to make sure to show off everything that I could save for the case, which we'll be seeing in a little bit. But yeah, I've never done a video like this before. I'm excited. Hopefully we'll get to learn something here. Hopefully you guys will get to learn something. So with all that done, let's go right to our friend Bulbtastic, who's gonna help us put all of this together. I am freaking stoked. I can't wait to see the end product. Okay, hey, now I'm here in the Bulb Palace. Bulb is gonna be helping out with pretty much doing the setup on the PC. I'm gonna be just filming. I'll catch a couple cool B-roll shots, and yeah, Bulb, why don't you tell us about how long you think this is gonna take?
I usually tell people an hour, but it usually takes 2. So yeah, it shouldn't really take that long though. Yeah.
How long have you been setting up computers for?
God, probably since I was 12. And that was like 20 years ago, so.
So a 20-year vet. Gonna help me set up this computer. It's off screen. We're not gonna waste any more time. Let's get to it.
What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? I don't understand what's going on. understand what's going on.